The dragon court made servant girl Elara Wren polish the dead dragon mirror before King Lucien's dying fire. By dawn, they expected the black glass to stay blind and prove low-born hands could not wake royal magic. By midnight, it would show her wearing the Dragon King's crown, the only future where he survived the assassination already waiting for him. The mirror had not reflected anyone in 300 years. It stood at the far end of the Ember Hall, taller than the throne doors, framed in black dragon bone and cracked gold. Its surface was not silver, not glass, not water. It was darkness, polished so smooth that every candle placed before it seemed to vanish instead of shine. Generations of kings had tried to wake it. Priests had bled over it. Queens had sung to it. Dragonaires had pressed their palms to it on coronation nights. The mirror had answered none of them. Tonight, the court brought a servant. Elara stood at the foot of the dais with a polishing cloth in her hands and ash on the hem of her plain brown dress. Her sleeves were rolled to the elbows from scrubbing hearthstone. Her dark hair had been pinned badly at the back of her neck, and a streak of soot marked one cheek where someone had shoved her through the lower kitchens too quickly for her to wash. Around her, the dragon court glittered. Nobles in red velvet and black scale cloaks watched from crescent balconies. Flame priests stood beside copper braziers. Ladies with jeweled throats whispered behind painted fans. They had not gathered for worship. They had gathered for correction. That was what they called humiliation, when it happened to someone beneath them. Lord Chancellor Veron stood beside the dead mirror, silver-haired and severe, dressed in court black embroidered with tiny red flames. His face was calm, elegant, and sharp enough to make cruelty look like discipline. "The dead dragon mirror shows only royal truth," he said. "If it remains black beneath this girl's touch, the accusation against her is confirmed." Elara kept her gaze lowered, not because she accepted guilt, because servants who met noble eyes too long were accused of arrogance before the first question was asked. She had been blamed for a broken reflection. That was what made the punishment strange. 3 nights ago, while polishing the bronze doors outside the Ember Hall, Elara had seen something move inside the dead mirror. Not her face, not the hall, a flash of fire, a hand on black glass, a crown falling through smoke. She had dropped her bucket. The sound had brought guards. By morning, the court said she had been caught staring into forbidden royal magic. By noon, someone claimed she had whispered to the mirror. By sunset, Chancellor Veron declared that if low-born ambition had disturbed the relic, low-born hands should be made to prove it publicly. So now she stood before the court with a rag in her hand, as if dust were the crime. Lady Calanthe, the favored flame bride candidate, stood beside the throne steps in a gown of gold silk and red jewels. She was beautiful in a polished, untouchable way, her auburn hair braided beneath a circlet of flame-shaped rubies. The flame-shaped rubies in her circlet reflected no fire, only the mirror's darkness. "How generous," Calanthe said softly. "Most servants dream of seeing themselves above their station. This one gets to fail in front of the whole court." Soft laughter spread. Elara's fingers tightened around the cloth. She wanted to say she had not dreamed of crowns. She had dreamed of sleeping without being woken before dawn to scrub blood from banquet floors. She had dreamed of eating bread while it was still warm. She had dreamed of one day leaving the palace through the front gate instead of the servant tunnels. But servants were not asked what they dreamed. They were punished for appearing to have dreams at all. Then the Dragon King entered. The hall changed before anyone announced him. Every flame bent toward the doors. Lucien Vere walked beneath the arch of black dragon bone, tall and broad-shouldered in dark ceremonial armor. His hair was black, his face severe, his eyes the deep gold of banked fire. He wore no crown tonight. That made him more dangerous somehow, as if kingship were something inside his bones rather than on his head. At his throat, beneath the open collar of his armor, burned the royal flame mark. It should have been steady. It flickered once when he passed the mirror. Elara saw it. So did Wren. The Chancellor's eyes moved briefly toward her, too briefly for the court to notice, long enough for Elara to feel cold beneath her skin. Elara noticed one flame priest, watching the king's ribs instead of the mirror. The priest's eyes did not lift when Lucien crossed the hall. They followed the narrow gap beneath his armor, the place where a blade could enter if someone knew when the king would kneel. Elara's stomach tightened. No one else seemed to see it. Or worse, some of them did. Lucien stopped before the dais. His gaze took in the mirror, the nobles, Wren, then finally the servant girl holding the polishing cloth. "Why is she here?" Wren bowed. "To settle a disturbance, Your Majesty. A disturbance requires a court. When it touches royal prophecy, yes." Elara's breath caught. Prophecy. No one had said that word when they dragged her from the kitchens. Lucien's eyes shifted to her. "What did you see?" The hall went still. Elara lifted her head before fear could stop her. Not fully. Enough to see him. The Dragon King looked at her, as if an answer from her mouth mattered. That was almost more frightening than contempt. "I saw fire in the glass," she said. Murmurs moved through the court. Wren's voice cut them cleanly. A servant's imagination. Elara looked at the mirror. Its black surface drank every flame in the hall. "I saw a crown fall," she added. Silence struck harder. Lucien's gaze sharpened. Wren smiled faintly. "There. Ambition reveals itself. A girl who scrubs ash dreams of falling crowns." Elara's face burned. She lowered her eyes too late. Lucien turned to the Chancellor. "And your solution is to make her polish it. If the mirror rejects her, the court will know she lied. If it wakes, we will know something far more dangerous." Lady Calanthe stepped closer to Lucien, her voice soft enough to sound concerned. "The court is uneasy. Let the mirror expose the truth cleanly." Elara saw Wren's hand tighten at his side. Calanthe was not simply supporting him, she was following his timing. Lucien looked once more at Elara. There was no kindness in his face. Not yet. But there was attention, and attention from a king was a blade that could cut either direction. "Proceed," he said. The word landed quietly. Elara wished it had not hurt. 2 guards guided her up the dais steps. The polishing cloth in her hand suddenly felt absurd. What did one do with a dead mirror older than the kingdom? Scrub it until it decided she was beneath it? She stopped before the black glass. Up close, the mirror was colder than stone. Fine cracks ran through its darkness, like frozen lightning. Along the frame, dragonbone carvings showed kings kneeling, queens burning, servants faceless and bent beneath trays. Elara lifted the cloth. Her hand shook. The court watched. Wren watched. Lucien watched. The flame priest watched the king's ribs. Elara touched the mirror. The cloth turned to ash. Black glass flared gold beneath her palm. Every flame in the hall went out. The court screamed. Elara tried to pull back, but the mirror held her hand against its surface. Fire rushed beneath the glass, not burning her skin, but racing through the cracks as if it had been waiting centuries for her touch. The rubies in Calanthe's circlet cracked like overheated glass. Then the dead mirror reflected. Not the hall. A future. Inside the glass, Elara stood on the dragon throne, wearing Lucien's black crown. Her plain servant dress had become a gown of mirror flame, silver at the edges, burning without smoke. Behind her, Dragon King Lucien knelt on one knee, one hand braced against the floor, blood-red fire pouring from a wound beneath his ribs. The real Lucien went still. Lady Calanthe stepped back. Wren's face turned colorless. Inside the reflection, Mirror Elara lifted her crowned head, and looked directly through the glass. Then the future spoke with her voice. If he refuses this crown on my head, he dies before dawn. If he refuses this crown on my head, he dies before dawn. The future spoke in Elara's voice. Not loudly. That made it worse. The words passed through the dead mirror and entered the ember hall like a blade slipped quietly between ribs. For one heartbeat, no one moved. The black glass burned gold beneath Elara's trapped palm. Every flame in the hall had gone out, yet the mirror lit the court in a strange, merciless glow. Inside the reflection, Elara sat on the dragon throne, wearing Lucien's crown. Behind her, Lucien knelt, bleeding fire. In the real hall, the Dragon King stared at the image without blinking. Then the court erupted. Ambition, magic. Servant witch, false future, seize her. Elara tried to pull her hand from the mirror again, but the glass held her. Panic climbed her throat, hot and sharp. She had expected humiliation. She had expected the mirror to remain black and the court to laugh as guards dragged her back to the kitchens or the cells. She had not expected to see herself crowned. She had not expected to see the king bleeding behind her, and she had not expected the future to speak as if it knew dawn was already hunting him. Lord Chancellor Veron moved first. He lifted one hand, and the guards around the dais drew their blades. Remove her from the relic. The mirror pulsed. Gold cracks raced outward from Elara's palm. Lucien's voice cut through the chaos. No one touches her. The order froze every sword, halfway from its sheath. Elara looked at him. His face remained severe, but his eyes were fixed on the reflection, not on the crown, not on her transformed gown, but on the wound beneath his own ribs. The reflected Lucien knelt with one hand braced against the floor, blood-red fire pouring between his fingers. The real Lucien's hand moved once toward the same place on his armor. Small, instinctive. The flame priest Elara had noticed before also looked there, not at the crown, not at the mirror, at the ribs. Elara's breath caught. The priest knew where the wound would be. Veron saw her eyes shift. His expression hardened. Your Majesty, the Chancellor said, smooth and urgent. The mirror has been corrupted by low-born desire. A servant girl sees herself enthroned, and we are meant to call it prophecy? The mirror answered. A second image flickered across the glass. Elara, standing alone in a dark corridor, a hand pressing a blade wrapped in red silk into the gap beneath Lucien's armor. Fire spilling soundlessly. A flame priest lowering his eyes while a circlet of cracked rubies reflected black glass. The image vanished before half the court could understand it. But Lucien did. So did Veron. So did Calanthe. The rubies in her circlet cracked further, one by one, too softly for the shouting court to hear. Elara heard them anyway. Tiny glass-like fractures, like teeth breaking in a closed mouth. Calanthe lifted a hand to the circlet. Her face did not pale. It sharpened. Elara Wren, she said, voice carrying with perfect hurt. You dare show yourself in my king's crown and then pretend fear. The words turned the court toward a simpler story. A servant's ambition. A jealous, low-born girl. A false future born from hunger. Elara felt that story wrapping around her throat. I did not ask it to show that. Veron stepped closer to the mirror. But you did touch it. You ordered me to reveal truth, he said. And it has. Lucien turned his head slightly. Has it? Veron's eyes met his. For the first time, something dangerous passed between king and chancellor that was not public theater. Lucien looked back at the mirror. If the future is false, why did it show a wound I have not received? Because servants overhear things, Veron said. Because kitchens breed rumors faster than disease. Because any girl who scrubs near closed doors can gather enough fragments to dress ambition as warning. Elara's shame flared hot. She had scrubbed near closed doors. She had carried trays past council rooms. She had learned to become invisible, because invisibility was the only safety servants were given, but she had never used listening to climb. She had used it to survive. The mirror burned colder against her palm. A third reflection appeared. This one showed no throne. Only Elara, in the lower kitchens that morning, kneeling beside a spilled coal bucket while a court guard stepped over her fingers. Above the kitchen arch, the shadow of Veron's seal passed over the wall. A servant boy whispered that the king's supper tray had been changed. Then the image shifted to a goblet filled with wine dark enough to hide a spark of red fire at the bottom. "Elara gasped. I saw that tray," she whispered. Lucien heard her. "What tray?" Veron snapped. "Enough." He struck the mirror's frame with the silver ring on his hand. Black sparks leapt from the dragon bone. Elara cried out as pain shot through her wrist. The mirror tried to pull her hand deeper into the glass, as if the future itself had tightened around her bones. Lucien stepped forward. Calanthe caught his arm. The gesture was graceful, almost tender. The mirror flashed. Inside the glass, Calanthe's fingers were not touching his sleeve. They were guiding him down, toward kneeling, toward the blade. Lucien looked at her hand. Slowly, Calanthe released him before he could command it. "My king," she whispered. "The mirror is turning you against the only people loyal enough to fear for you." Elara saw the cleverness in that. Fear for you. Not fear of losing power. Not fear of being exposed. Fear for you. Lucien's jaw tightened, and for one moment, Elara understood the trap he lived inside. Every person near him wrapped control in concern. Every warning could be love. Every chain could be protection. Every betrayal could wear the voice of duty. The mirror pulsed again. The future, Elara on the throne, leaned forward. Her crowned reflection pressed its palm against the other side of the glass, directly over Elara's hand. Then it spoke again. "The first blade is not the last." The court fell silent. Lucien's eyes narrowed. First, the mirror changed. A feast table at midnight, a cup of ember wine, a flame priest blessing a dagger beneath red cloth, Calanthe's cracked rubies turning black, Veron standing behind the throne doors with the old succession charter open in his hands. Then Lucien on the floor, fire bleeding from his ribs, a crown placed, not on Calanthe's head, not on Veron's, on an empty throne. The image shattered. Elara stumbled, but the mirror still held her. Veron's mask finally slipped, only for a breath, enough for Elara to see fear beneath his discipline. "Destroy the mirror," he said. The court went still. Lucien turned fully toward him. "You would destroy a royal relic because a servant woke it." Veron bowed. "Because a corrupted relic can murder a kingdom faster than any blade." "No," Elara said. Her voice was small, but the mirror carried it. Everyone heard. Veron looked at her like he had forgotten servants could interrupt. Elara's heart hammered so hard she almost could not speak, but the crowned reflection inside the glass watched her, waiting, not commanding, waiting. "It is not showing what I want," Elara said. "It is showing what someone wants hidden." The mirror flared. Gold fire rushed across its cracks and down into the floor, forming a ring of light around the dais. Every person standing inside the ring cast a reflection on the black glass. Everyone, except one flame priest, the priest who had watched Lucien's ribs. His body stood in the hall, but the mirror showed nothing where his reflection should have been. Lucien saw it. The priest turned to run. He made it 3 steps before the mirror spoke, with Elara's voice again. "The assassin has already entered the hall." The dead flames in every brazier reignited blue. The flame priest drew a hidden red silk blade from beneath his robe, and he lunged toward the Dragon King's ribs. The flame priest lunged toward the Dragon King's ribs. No one moved quickly enough. Not the guards who had been watching Elara. Not the nobles who had been staring at the mirror. Not Calanthe, whose hand flew to her cracked ruby circlet too late to look innocent. Not Veron, whose face had become frighteningly still. Only the mirror moved first. Gold fire shot from the black glass and wrapped around Elara's trapped hand. Pain tore through her wrist. She cried out, but the mirror did not release her. It turned her body sharply, as if using her arm as the hinge of a door. The ring of mirror flame around the dais flared, and Lucien's reflection changed a heartbeat before the real world did. Inside the glass, the assassin's blade entered beneath the king's ribs. Outside the glass, Elara saw the angle. Left, she shouted. Lucien obeyed. Not fully, not because he trusted her yet, because something in her voice struck faster than thought. He twisted left as the red silk blade flashed through the space where his body had been. The dagger still cut him, not deep enough to kill, but sharp enough to split armor and draw fire blood from beneath his ribs. The hall exploded into screams. Lucien seized the assassin by the throat and drove him to the stone floor so hard, the blue flames in the braziers leapt. The priest's hood fell back, revealing a narrow face streaked with ash and terror. Veron spoke before Lucien could. Take the girl. Elara froze. The order made no sense. Then she understood. It made perfect sense. If they seized the assassin first, the court would ask who sent him. If they seized her, the court could be convinced the mirror had not warned them of a murder it had created one. 2 guards grabbed Elara from behind. The mirror still held her palm. When they pulled, pain ripped through her shoulder. Gold fire raced up the glass, and the future inside it flickered. Elara thrown into the cells, Lucien bleeding alone. Veron opening the succession charter before dawn. Calanthe standing beside the empty throne with black rubies at her brow. No. Elara gasped. Lucien turned. Fire blood ran from the cut beneath his ribs, bright red gold against black armor. His face was cold now, in a way the hall had not seen before. Not court cold, war cold. I said no one touches her. The guards released her immediately. One dropped to a knee. The assassin under Lucien's hand choked out a laugh. Too late. Lucien looked down. The flame priest smiled through blood. First blade only wakes the second. The mirror flashed. Every flame in the hall bent toward the throne doors. Elara saw a new reflection. A narrow wound under Lucien's ribs, not fatal yet, but glowing with red poison. A line of fire moving from the cut toward his heart. Calanthe's rubies beating in time with it. Veron's ring pressed to a hidden seal beneath the mirror frame. She looked at the real Lucien. The cut was smoking. Your wound, she said. It is not only a cut. The court murmured again. Veron's voice hardened. A servant girl has no right to diagnose royal blood. She is not diagnosing, Lucien said. She is looking. His eyes did not leave Elara. That should have comforted her. Instead, it frightened her because she could feel the court changing its fear. Before, they had feared her ambition. Now, they feared his attention to her. Calanthe moved carefully toward Lucien. My king, let the healers examine you. The rubies in her circlet glowed black for the smallest breath. Elara saw it. So did the mirror. The glass showed Calanthe's hand touching the wound. The black ruby light entering Lucien's fire blood. His knees striking the floor. His crown rolling down the dais steps. Elara spoke before she could stop herself. Do not let her near the wound. Calanthe turned slowly. Her face was beautiful and wounded. Every inch of it shaped for the court. You accuse me now? I accuse the mirror of showing me your hand on his blood. Gasps rose from the balconies. Calanthe's eyes filled with tears too quickly. She wants my place, she whispered. First, she shows herself crowned. Now, she names me poison. How much more must a servant say before we call treason by its name? Veron stepped forward. Your Majesty, The girl has done what all forbidden bloodlines do. She has wrapped a murder attempt around herself until you think she is the only answer to it. Forbidden bloodlines. The words struck the mirror. Gold fire beneath Elara's palm turned white. Her reflection changed. No crown this time. No throne. A child hiding beneath a scullery table, while a woman with the same dark eyes pressed a thumb to her forehead and whispered, "Never look too long into flame glass. If it looks back, run." Elara's breath caught. She had forgotten that, or been made to forget. A memory from before the kitchens, before soot, before the palace called her a nameless servant. The mirror whispered beneath her skin. Mirror flame. Veron saw her face and knew something had woken. "Destroy it now," he snapped. This time, 3 flame priests moved, not toward Elara, toward the mirror frame. Each carried a small hammer of red stone, hidden beneath prayer cloth. They had not brought those by accident. They had come prepared to break the mirror, if it answered. Lucien saw it too. His eyes narrowed. "You came to a cleansing trial with mirror breakers." Veron bowed his head. "A precaution. Against what?" The assassin on the floor laughed again, weaker now. "Against her." The mirror flame ring widened. It caught the 3 priests at the edge of the dais, forcing their reflections onto the black glass. Their real bodies wore priestly robes. Their reflections wore black execution masks. Each reflection held not a hammer, but a shard of the same dead mirror, sharpened like a blade. The court recoiled. Elara pressed her free hand over the wrist trapped against the glass. "Why are they reflected differently?" Lucien answered before Veron could. "Because they are not here as priests." Veron's face went still. The assassin coughed blood. "Second blade. 3rd flame. 4th crown." Lucien looked down sharply. "Who sent you?" The man's eyes rolled toward Veron, then toward Calanthe, then, strangely, toward the mirror. "I serve the future that survives." His body ignited from within. Blue fire consumed him before Lucien could drag another word from his throat. The flame left no ash, only a red silk strip and a smear of black glass dust on the floor. Elara stared at it in horror. Veron lifted his voice to the court. "You have seen enough. The mirror kills witnesses. The girl woke it. The king bleeds. Shall we let a kitchen servant guide succession because a corrupted relic puts a crown on her head?" The nobles began shouting. Some called for Elara's arrest. Some called for the mirror to be broken. Some called for Lucien to leave the hall before the future trapped him. Through it all, the Dragon King stood bleeding beneath the dead mirror's gold light. Elara looked at him. She saw the strain in his jaw, the pain beneath his ribs, the political trap tightening around him. If he defended her too strongly, Veron would call him bewitched. If he condemned her, the mirror's warning would die with her. If he hesitated, the assassination would continue. The mirror showed another flash. Dame, Lucien's body beneath the throne. Elara wearing the crown with tears on her face. Veron's hand closing over the succession charter. Then, darkness. Elara swallowed. "The mirror is not asking for my crown," she said. The hall quieted enough to hear her. Lucien's gaze sharpened. Elara forced herself to meet the eyes of the king, then the court, then the reflection where her crowned self stood, like a future she did not want. It is asking why the only future where he lives needs one. The dead dragon mirror thundered. A crack opened down its center, not breaking, opening. Inside the crack, a corridor of black fire appeared, and at the end of it stood a door, marked with Lucien's blood and Veron's seal. The crowned Elara inside the mirror spoke one final time before the vision vanished. "The second blade is already inside the king. The second blade is already inside the king." The words vanished into the mirror's crack, but their meaning stayed in the ember hall like smoke after fire. Lucien did not move. Elara did. She turned toward him before fear could stop her, eyes dropping to the wound beneath his ribs. The first blade had cut him, but not deeply enough to kill a Dragon King. The court wanted to believe danger had ended, with the assassin burning to nothing on the floor. The mirror knew better. Lucien's fire blood still smoked through the broken seam of his armor. The wound glowed red at the edges, but beneath that red something black flickered in thin, glass-like veins. Not poison, exactly. Reflection. A shard of the dead dragon mirror had entered him through the blade. Elara saw it, because the mirror forced her to see it. Every time Lucien breathed, the black vein spread one hair deeper toward his heart, carrying fragments of futures that did not belong inside living blood. She whispered, "It is not a second dagger." Veron's head turned. "How convenient." Elara ignored him. "The blade left something inside you." Lucien's eyes narrowed. Pain had made his face paler, but his voice stayed controlled. "What?" The mirror pulsed beneath her palm. For one heartbeat, Elara saw through his wound. Black glass floating in fire. Blood, tiny reflections spinning inside it. In one, Lucien fell at dawn. In another, Veron placed a crown before an empty throne. In another, Calanthe stood beside a sealed marriage brazier while her cracked rubies turned black. Elara swallowed. Mirror, glass. The whole recoiled. One of the flame priests made a warding sign. Veron's expression became grave, almost sorrowful. "Your Majesty, you hear her. First she wakes the mirror. Then she names herself your survival. Now she claims the king carries mirror, glass in his blood. This is how forbidden prophecy takes a throne, not by force. By making the ruler believe only one voice can save him." The words were poison, dressed in reason. Elara felt them work. Nobles who had watched the assassin lunge now began looking at her again, not at the missing reflection, not at the mirror breakers, not at the chancellor whose seal waited behind the door in the vision. At her, the servant girl, the impossible future. Lucien saw it too. He looked at his court, then at Elara's trapped hand. "Can the mirror show the glass inside me?" Veron's eyes sharpened. "Your Majesty." Lucien did not look at him. "I asked her." The hall went silent. Elara's throat tightened. No one had ever asked her to prove truth before punishing her for it. They usually demanded confession first, and evidence never. She looked at the dead dragon mirror. Its crack had closed to a thin gold line, but the black glass remained warm beneath her palm. "I do not command it," she said. "Then ask." The simplicity of it shook her. Elara pressed her free hand over the one trapped against the mirror. "Show him." The mirror darkened. Then it reflected Lucien, not crowned, not kneeling. Standing as he was now, black armor cut beneath the ribs, fire blood shining through the wound. The reflection moved closer until the whole glass filled with the injury. Inside the wound, a shard of black mirror turned slowly like a seed. The court saw it. Even Veron could not speak quickly enough. The shard pulsed once. Lucien's knees nearly buckled. Calanthe rushed forward. "My king!" "Stop," Elara said. Calanthe froze, fury flashing through her perfect mask. The rubies in her circlet cracked again. This time, one small piece fell onto the floor and broke open. Inside the ruby was not gemstone. It was black glass. The court gasped. Calanthe stared down at it, as if betrayed by her own crown. Veron's face hardened. "Lady Calanthe, step back." The command was too quick, too familiar. Lucien heard it. So did Elara. Calanthe slowly lifted her gaze to Veron. "You said the rubies were flamestones." "They are," he said. The mirror flashed. Inside the glass, Calanthe sat in a private chamber while Veron placed the circlet on her head. The rubies burned red at first. Then he touched each one with a shard of black mirror glass. "If the servant wakes the mirror, the stones will break first," Veron said in the memory. "Do not panic. Panic looks like guilt." The memory vanished. Calanthe's face went white. Lucien turned toward Veron. The Chancellor bowed his head. "A manipulated reflection." Elara almost laughed. The sound did not come out. How many times could truth be called manipulation before a court became proud of blindness? The shard in Lucien's wound pulsed again. He gripped the edge of the dais. Elara felt the mirror pulling at her hand, not to trap her deeper, but to move her, toward him, toward the wound. She resisted, Lucien noticed. "What is it?" "The mirror wants me to touch the wound." The court erupted. "No, forbidden. She will put more glass inside him. She wants him kneeling like the reflection." Veron lifted his voice above them. "If she touches royal blood, the prophecy completes. You all saw it. The servant crowned, the king kneeling. Do not let staged rescue become ritual surrender." Elara pulled against the mirror again, panic rising. "I am not asking to touch him." Lucien looked at her. His face was unreadable. Then he stepped closer. The movement silenced half the hall. "Neither am I asking the court," he said. Veron moved between them. "Your Majesty, think. I am." The mirror showed you kneeling behind her. It showed me alive. It showed you beneath a servant. Lucien's eyes turned cold. "Perhaps that is what frightened you most." The words struck the court harder than any shout. Veron did not flinch, but something behind his eyes tightened. The shard in Lucien's wound flashed black. He staggered. Elara acted before the court could argue. She reached with her free hand and caught his forearm. Not the wound, only his arm. Still, the moment her fingers touched him, the mirror roared. Fire rushed through the hall. The black glass reflected a dozen futures at once. Lucien dying because he refused help. Lucien living but becoming Veron's puppet. Calanthe crowned beside an empty throne. Elara executed before dawn. Elara crowned and weeping. Lucien kneeling not in defeat, but because the wound would kill him if he stood too long. Elara saw the difference. The mirror was not showing her above him. It was showing him willing to lower himself long enough to survive. Lucien saw it too, his gaze locked on hers. "Tell me," her voice shook. "You have to kneel." The court went still. Veron smiled, slow and deadly. There it is. Elara's blood turned cold, but she did not take it back. "If you stay standing, the shard moves toward your heart. If you kneel, the fire, blood, settles low enough for the mirror to pull it out." Lucien's eyes did not leave hers. "Will it hurt?" "Yes." "Will it kill me?" "I do not know." The honesty landed between them. A strange thing passed through his expression. Not fear, not softness. Trust beginning where certainty ended. He lowered himself to one knee. The ember hall shattered into noise. Nobles cried out. Flame priests shouted. Calanthe covered her mouth with trembling hands. Veron looked triumphant for one breath until the mirror reflected the scene behind Lucien. Not a servant, conquering a king. A king, kneeling to remove a blade his court had hidden. Elara's trapped hand burned gold. The mirror finally released her palm. She stumbled forward, free, and caught herself before Lucien. The crown in the reflection appeared above her head again. Only now, Elara saw what it truly was. Not a crown, a ring of mirror flame, forming over her because the mirror needed a living lens. The court had mistaken witness for ambition. Elara placed her shaking hand near Lucien's wound. "Not touching yet. Do I have your permission?" The question silenced everything. Lucien looked up at her from one knee, fire blood burning beneath his ribs. The dragon court watching with horror. "Yes," he said. Elara touched the wound. The mirror glass shard screamed inside his blood, and every reflection in the hall turned toward Veron. Every reflection in the hall turned toward Veron. Not every face, every reflection. The nobles themselves stood frozen in the dark ember hall, some pale, some angry, some still clinging to the easier lie that a servant girl had somehow forced their king to kneel. But in the black glass, in the polished armor, in the copper braziers, in the broken ruby shard near Calanthe's feet, every mirrored surface showed the same thing. Lord Chancellor Veron, standing behind Lucien in another version of the hall, one hand raised, his silver ring pressed to the king's wound. Elara's fingers trembled against Lucien's side. The mirror glass shard inside him screamed without sound. Pain tore through Lucien's body. His hand struck the floor, fire blood dripping between his fingers, but he did not pull away from her touch. His jaw clenched so tightly, she thought his teeth might break. "Keep going," he said. The words were low, only for her. Elara swallowed hard. "It is moving. I feel it." "No," she whispered. "It is moving away from my hand." Lucien's eyes sharpened through pain. The black shard inside his wound shifted, not toward the mirror, but deeper beneath his ribs, trying to hide inside the royal flame mark. It was alive in the way curses were alive, built with intent, fed with fear, trained to choose the place that hurt most. The dead dragon mirror fled behind them. Inside the glass, the future Elara lifted one crowned hand and pressed it against her own ribs. Elara understood. "It is running toward your fire." Veron stepped forward. "Enough. She is touching royal blood and speaking nonsense while the king bleeds on the floor." Lucien's voice came like a blade. "One more step, and I will have your hand removed before you finish the next sentence." Veron stopped. The court stopped with him. Elara felt the shift. For the first time, the Chancellor's authority had not simply been questioned. It had been denied in front of everyone. The shard punished Lucien for it. Black fire lanced up his side. He bowed forward, breath-breaking. Elara almost pulled away. Terrified she was killing him faster by trying to save him, Lucien caught her wrist. Not to trap her, to keep her there. "Elara," he said, forcing her name through pain. "Do not let their fear guide your hand." Her breath caught. No one had ever said her name like it belonged in the hall. The mirror answered. Gold fire wrapped around Elara's fingers and entered the wound. She saw the shard clearly now, a thin splinter of dead mirror, edged in red silk, carrying Veron's seal in miniature. But it was not alone. Tiny black threads ran from it across the hall to Veron's ring, to the flame priest's hidden hammers, to the cracked rubies in Calanthe's circlet. Elara lifted her head. "It is tied to them." Calanthe went still. Veron's face did not change. That was answer enough. Lucien looked toward the flame bride candidate. "Remove the circlet." Calanthe's hand flew to her hair. "My king, remove it." Her eyes flashed with humiliation, then fear. Slowly, in front of the court that had praised her beauty all night, Calanthe lifted the flame-shaped ruby circlet from her head. Without it, she looked younger, less golden, more trapped. The mirror reflected her differently now. In the glass, she knelt before Veron while he placed the circlet on her head. "You will not need to stab him," the reflected Veron said. "Only stand close enough for the rubies to wake when he bleeds." Calanthe's real face crumpled. "I was told." It was protection. Elara believed that she had been told that. She did not yet know if she believed Calanthe had wanted to hear anything else. Lucien's gaze held Calanthe like fire held metal. "Did you know the rubies carried mirror glass?" "No," she whispered. The mirror pulsed. A second memory appeared. Calanthe standing alone after Veron left, touching one cracked ruby while black light flickered inside it. Her face in the reflection was frightened, but not innocent. "I knew they answered your blood," she said, voice breaking. I thought they were meant to bind the wound if prophecy attacked you. Veyron's mouth tightened. Elara felt the black thread in the shard pull sharply toward Calanthe's circlet, still in her hands. It is using the rubies, Elara said. If they break near his blood, the shard goes deeper. Lucien looked at Calanthe. Set it down. Calanthe obeyed too quickly. Veyron lifted his hand. The circlet leapt from her fingers. Its cracked rubies flared black and flew toward Lucien's wound like a ring of burning teeth. Elara did not think. She stepped between them. The rubies struck the mirror flame around her body and stopped inches from her chest, suspended in gold light. The force drove her backward. Lucien caught her with one arm despite the wound, and the contact sent mirror fire through both of them. For one breath, Elara saw the future again. Not one future, many. In some, she died with ruby shards buried in her heart. In some, Lucien killed Veyron and bled out before dawn. In one, Calanthe became queen beside an empty throne and spent the rest of her life listening to mirrors whisper his name. In the narrowest, most impossible future, Elara wore the crown not to rule over him, but to hold the mirror's authority long enough to strip the assassination from his blood. That was the crown, not power. Borden. Elara's hands shook. The mirror needs someone to carry its future. Veyron's voice cut through the hall. And she volunteers. How noble. No, Elara said. The word surprised even her. She looked at Lucien. I do not volunteer for a crown I do not understand. The dead dragon mirror went silent. Then Lucien, still on one knee, still bleeding, said, Then I ask. The court froze. Veyron's face turned cold. Lucien's eyes stayed on Elara. Not as king to servant, as the man dying inside that future. Will you carry enough of the mirror's crown to pull the blade out? Elara could barely breathe. Every servant instinct in her screamed caution. Kings asked politely, only when they wanted obedience to look like choice. Courts remembered low-born hands, only when they needed them to bleed cleanly for high-born survival. But Lucien had asked, and waited. The mirror did not force her answer. Neither did he. Elara looked at the reflected crown above her head. Mirror flame, not gold. Witness, not conquest. She looked at the wound beneath his ribs, at the shard running toward his heart, at Veyron standing too still beside the dead mirror he had wanted destroyed. Then she nodded. Yes, the mirror crowned her. Fire erupted from the black glass and formed a ring above Elara's head, silver, gold, and sharp as reflected lightning. The court cried out. Lucien bowed his head not in surrender, but because the mirror flame required the king's wound below the crown's line. Elara placed both hands over the wound. Show me the blade. The shard screamed. This time, it came out. A splinter of black glass rose from Lucien's fireblood, writhing like a living thorn. Gold flame clung to it. Red silk wrapped its base. At its center burned Veyron's seal. The court saw. Lucien saw. Veyron saw them seeing. The Chancellor's mask broke. Third flame, he said. Every blue brazier in the hall turned black. The flame priests who had pretended fear now lifted their hidden mirror hammers and struck the floor in unison. The ember hole split beneath the throne, and below it, something answered from the old succession crypt. The ember hall split beneath the throne. Black fire poured up through the crack. Not ordinary flame, not dragon fire. It burned without heat, swallowing the blue brazier's light and turning every polished surface into a thin, trembling mirror. The floor beneath the dais opened in a jagged line from the dead dragon mirror to the dragon throne, and from below came the sound of old chains moving in a place that had not been opened during any living reign. The succession crypt. Elara had heard servants whisper of it while scrubbing the lower corridors. A chamber beneath the throne, where dead kings' names were sealed in flame. where disputed crowns were judged, where succession laws, older than mercy, slept under ash. She had never believed the stories. Now the floor had opened like the palace itself wanted to swallow the throne. Lucien remained on one knee before her, breathing through pain, fireblood still wet beneath his ribs. The mirror flame crown burned above Elara's head, weightless and unbearable. The splinter of black glass she had pulled from him hovered between her palms, writhing around Veyron's seal. The court saw the seal. That should have ended everything. It did not. Veyron lifted his hand, and the hidden flame priests struck the floor again with their mirror hammers. Black fire climbed the walls. The old dragon bone carvings along the mirror frame opened their mouths as if remembering a language made for dying kings. "Witness the danger," Veyron called to the court. "A servant wears mirror crown. The king kneels bleeding beneath her hands. The succession crypt opens because royal order has been violated." Elara stared at him. Even now, with his seal burning inside the blade that had almost killed Lucien, he was turning proof into accusation. The nobles were terrified enough to listen. Calanthe stood near the broken ruby circlet, face pale, both hands clasped at her throat, as if she could still feel the weight of stones she had removed. The mirror reflected her surrounded by black threads, each one tied to Veyron, the shattered circlet, and the open crypt below. Lucien looked at Veyron from one knee. "You sent the blade. I preserved the throne. You tried to murder me. I prevented the kingdom from falling into prophecy." The black fire surged higher at the word prophecy. Veyron turned toward the court. "The dead dragon mirror has shown a future where royal blood kneels beneath low-born flame. If that future is accepted, then succession law is broken. If succession law is broken, every border lord, every dragon heir, every oath-bound vassal will challenge the crown before sunrise." Elara felt the mirror crown tighten. Not physically, politically. Veyron was not only trying to kill Lucien, he was making survival look like treason against the throne itself. If Lucien accepted Elara's help, he became a king ruled by forbidden future. If he rejected her, he died. If the court feared the first more than the second, Veyron would win without needing another dagger. The crack beneath the throne widened. A staircase of black stone descended into the crypt, lit by flame that reflected no faces. From below rose an iron pedestal carrying an ancient book bound in dragon hide. The succession charter. Veyron smiled. "There," he said softly. "Let old law judge what living fear cannot." The charter opened by itself. Pages turned in the black fire. Lucien tried to stand. The wound answered instantly. Black sparks burst beneath his ribs, and he nearly collapsed. Elara reached for him, then stopped before touching. "Do not stand yet," she said. The court heard. Veyron smiled wider. Lucien's eyes lifted to hers. There was pain in them. Fury, humiliation, and beneath all of it something harder than pride. The understanding that standing too soon would prove nothing except that he was willing to die to look unbowed. He stayed on one knee. The choice cost him. Elara saw it. So did the mirror. The crown above her softened by 1 degree, as if the future itself had recognized courage in restraint. Veyron pointed toward the charter. "The law speaks. If a ruler kneels beneath another crown inside the Ember Hall, the court must test whether sovereignty has transferred." A roar of panic moved through the nobles. Elara's blood went cold. Transferred. That was the trap. The mirror crown over her head had never been ambition, but Veyron could make it look like legal seizure. If the court accepted the test, Lucien's authority could be declared unstable while he was wounded. Veyron could become regent before dawn, or Calanthe could be crowned as flame bride under emergency law. Lucien's voice was low. "No one tests sovereignty while assassination blood is still warm." Veyron bowed. Old law allows no delay. The succession charter flared black. A line of flame rose from the page and shot toward Elara's mirror crown. She cried out as it struck. Not pain, exactly. Judgment. The crown blazed brighter above her head. Images flooded the hall. Elara scrubbing hearthstone. Elara carrying coal. Elara sleeping in a storage alcove because the servant dormitory had flooded. Elara dropping her bucket outside the Ember Hall 3 nights ago. Elara seeing fire in dead glass. The law searched her life for ambition, for conspiracy, for royal claim. It found hunger, exhaustion, fear, small acts of kindness no one had noticed. A crust of bread slipped to a younger servant. A burn treated with stolen kitchen salve. A broken cup hidden so an old maid would not be whipped. Elara standing outside the mirror, after seeing the crown fall and whispering, "Please let it not be him." The court went silent. Lucien looked at her. The mirror crown did not show a usurper. It showed a servant who had never asked for a throne. Veron's mouth tightened. The succession charter turned another page. Black flame shot toward Lucien. It struck the wound beneath his ribs. He bowed forward with a harsh breath, one hand slamming against the floor. The old law searched him too. His reign, his blood, his choices, his enemies. The border wars he had ended with fire, the executions he had signed, the nights he had stayed awake while the court slept, reading reports of famine in provinces nobles never visited. The times he had trusted Veron because the Chancellor always brought solutions before anyone else admitted problems existed. Then the mirror showed the futures Veron had hidden. Lucien dead before dawn. Veron, appointed emergency regent. Calanthe, crowned beside the sealed brazier. Border lords, kept obedient through forged dragon oaths. The future shrank under Veron's hand until the kingdom survived by becoming a cage. The charter trembled. For the first time, old law hesitated. Veron saw the hesitation and moved. He seized Calanthe's broken circlet from the floor and drove one cracked ruby shard into the open page. Calanthe screamed. No. Black fire erupted from the charter and wrapped around her throat. Veron looked at her, cold and precise. Flame Bride candidate Calanthe bears royal, adjacent fire. Under emergency succession, her bond may stabilize the throne if the king is compromised. Calanthe clawed at the black flame around her neck. The court gasped. Elara saw the next move before it happened. Veron would force Calanthe into the role of legal bridge. If Lucien was declared compromised and Elara declared a low-born prophetic threat, Calanthe could be crowned by law, then ruled through Veron. Calanthe looked at Lucien, then at Elara. For the first time all night, her polished beauty broke open into something raw. "I knew the rubies were dangerous," she said. Veron's eyes snapped to her. "I knew they answered his blood," she continued, voice shaking. "I told myself they were protection, because protection sounded better than hunger." The black flame around her throat tightened. Still, she spoke. "But Veron gave them to me. Veron told me if the mirror woke, I must stand close to the king. Veron said the future could be corrected if the servant was blamed before dawn." The court erupted. Veron's face hardened into ice. "Foolish girl." Lucien's eyes burned gold. The mirror crown above Elara flared. The succession charter shook violently, its pages turning faster and faster as Calanthe's confession entered old law. Elara felt the crown pull at her again. It did not want her to rule. It wanted her to witness the future clearly enough to choose the next step. She looked at the hovering shard bearing Veron's seal, then at Lucien's wound, then at the open succession charter. "The third flame is not meant to kill him," she whispered. Lucien lifted his head. "What?" "It is meant to make the law kill you." Veron moved toward the crypt stairs. Elara pointed at him. "Stop him!" But Veron was already inside the black fire. He placed his hand on the succession charter and spoke the old words. "If the living king kneels beneath a false crown, let the dead kings decide whether he remains king." The crypt answered. From beneath the throne, voices rose like ash. Through a sealed tomb, "Dead dragon kings." Lucien's face went pale. Elara's mirror crown burned white. The voices spoke together. "Bring the crowned servant below. Bring the crowned servant below." The voices of the dead dragon kings rose from beneath the throne like ash through a grave. The ember hole fell silent. Even the black fire stopped moving for one breath. Elara stood on the dais, with the mirror flame crown burning above her head, the splinter of black glass bearing Veron's seal still hovering between her hands. Lucien remained on one knee before her, fire blood darkening the edge of his armor, his face pale from the shard wound and the pressure of old law. Calanthe knelt near the broken circlet, black flame still wrapped around her throat, but her confession had entered the succession charter. It could not be unsaid now. That was why Veron had gone below, to make dead law speak before living truth could finish. The crypt voices came again. "Bring the crowned servant below." The nobles began to whisper. Not servant girl now, crowned servant. The words were worse because they sounded official. Veron had changed the shape of fear. Elara was no longer merely a low-born girl accused of ambition. She had become a legal impossibility, standing beneath a crown of forbidden mirror flame, while the Dragon King bled at her feet. Lucien pushed one hand against the floor, trying to rise. The wound beneath his ribs flared black. He swayed. Elara stepped toward him instinctively, but he lifted a hand before she touched him, not to reject her help, to stop himself from needing too much of it, where the court could turn every breath into evidence. "I will go," he said. The succession charter answered from below. "No." The dead king's voices rolled through the floor. The crowned servant must stand before the root of law. Veron's voice drifted up from the crypt stairs, calm again now that he had reached the old machinery of the throne. "You hear them, your majesty. Old law does not negotiate with wounded kings." Lucien's eyes burned. "Old law is being used by a traitor." "Old law remembers order," Veron replied. "If the servant is innocent, let her descend. If her crown is witness and not theft, the dead kings will know." Elara looked at the black staircase, descending beneath the throne. Every instinct in her body recoiled. Servants knew underground places, kitchens, ash tunnels, coal rooms, burial corridors, where noble families never walked. Nothing good happened to low-born bodies below the level of polished stone. The court sent people downward when it wanted their screams muffled. The mirror crown tightened above her, not forcing, warning. Inside the dead dragon mirror, her crowned reflection stared back at her. The future version of Elara looked afraid too. That mattered. It meant the crown did not make her fearless. It only made her responsible for seeing. Lucien looked at her. "You do not have to prove yourself to a law he is twisting." The hall heard him. Veron laughed softly from below. "Then the king refuses judgment. The charter will record it." Elara understood the trap. If she refused, Veron would say the mirror crown feared old law. If Lucien tried to protect her from the crypt, Veron would say the servant had compromised him. If guards dragged her down, she would enter as prisoner. But if she walked down herself, the story changed. Not enough to save her. Enough to keep one piece of herself. She turned toward Lucien. "If I go because I choose to ask what law is hiding." His jaw tightened. "Elara." She shook her head once. The gesture was small. The court noticed it, because no servant was supposed to interrupt a king even gently. "I do not want your crown," she said, voice low enough that it felt meant for him alone. though the mirror carried every word. But if that is what the future put above my head, I want to know what it needs me to see. Lucien's expression changed. Pine, respect, fear, perhaps. Not fear of her, fear for her. He looked as if he hated that difference. Then I go as far as old law allows, he said. The dead kings did not object. That was something. Elara turned toward Calanthe. The flame-bride candidate was still on her knees, one hand at her throat, black fire choking her confession into the charter. Her eyes met Elara's, stripped of pride. The rubies, Elara said. Can Veron still use them from below? Calanthe looked at the broken circlet. If any shard reaches the charter, yes, then keep them away from it. Calanthe gave a bitter, frightened breath. You trust me with that? No, Elara said. I trust that you know what happens if he crowns you through a lie. Calanthe absorbed the answer. Then she reached for the broken circlet and closed both hands around the ruby shards, even though black flame burned her palms. She did not cry out. For the first time, Elara did not see a rival. She saw another woman turned into an instrument and finally forced to decide whether she would keep singing the tune. Elara stepped down the first stair. The mirror crown followed. Lucien walked behind her, one hand pressed to his wound, sword in the other. Each step cost him. The black mirror shard was gone, but the wound had not healed. Veron's assassination had been made in layers, and the crypt waited with the next one. The succession crypt opened beneath the throne, like the inside of a dead dragon's rib cage. Its walls were carved from black stone and lined with ancient crowns sealed behind glass. At the center stood the succession charter on an iron pedestal, its pages burning without being consumed. Around it rose 12 statues of dead dragon kings, each seated in judgment, their eyes filled with ember-dark light. Veron stood before the charter with one hand on the page. He looked entirely at home among dead rulers. Elara Wren, he said. Servant of the lower kitchens, accused disturber of royal prophecy, bearer of an unlawful mirror, crown, step before the root of succession. Elara descended the last stair. The floor beneath her feet reflected nothing. That frightened her more than if it had shown monsters. Lucien tried to step beside her. A wall of black flame rose between them. He struck it with his sword. The blade rebounded, throwing sparks across the crypt. The dead king spoke. The wounded king may witness. He may not answer in her place. Veron smiled. Elara stood alone before the charter. Not truly alone. Lucien was there beyond the flame, furious and bleeding. The dead dragon mirror still burned above the hall, and the mirror crown above her head did not vanish. Veron opened the charter wider. Old law asks first, by what blood does the crowned servant claim the throne? Elara's hands tightened. I do not claim it. The statues answered. Then, why does the crown remain? Veron's eyes gleamed. There it was, the question he had built everything toward. Elara felt the court, listening from above. Felt Lucien watching from behind the black flame. Felt the crown burning above her, waiting not for a noble answer, but a true one. She closed her eyes for one breath and remembered the mirror frame. Kings, kneeling. Queens, burning. Servants, faceless, beneath trays. Then she opened them, because no one ever asked what the mirror crowns. The crypt went still. Veron's smile faded slightly. Elara looked at the dead kings. You think it crowns rulers? Maybe that is why it stayed dead for 300 years. The mirror flame crown brightened. It crowns the witness who can survive looking at the future everyone else once buried. A crack ran through the nearest statue's stone hand. Veron's face hardened. A poetic evasion. No, Elara said, surprising herself with the steadiness in her voice. An answer. The succession charter turned a page by itself. Black fire rose from it, and wrapped around Elara's wrists, searching for proof of royal blood. It found none. The dead king spoke again. No royal blood. Wren lifted his chin. Then, unlawful crown. The black fire tightened. Pain shot up Elara's arms. She nearly fell. Lucien slammed his fist against the flame wall. Stop this. But the crown above Elara blazed white. The charter turned another page. This time, the black fire sank beneath her skin and pulled up a memory she did not know she carried. A woman with soot, dark hair, kneeling before the dead dragon mirror 30 years ago, her hand pressed to the glass, a mirror flame crown above her head, a baby wrapped in servant cloth crying at her side, Wren younger, standing near the door with a blade already drawn. The woman looked into the mirror and whispered, "If my daughter ever wakes you, show her the future that saves the king." Elara stopped breathing. "My mother," she whispered. Wren went utterly still. The memory woman turned toward the younger Wren. "You will call our blood unlawful, because you fear what it sees." Young Wren raised the blade. The memory shattered before the strike landed. The dead kings spoke. Softer now. Mirror. Flame blood. Wren ripped his hand from the charter. Extinct blood. The mirror crown burned brighter above Elara's head. Elara looked at him. For the first time, his fear made perfect sense. He had not feared a servant girl wanting a crown. He had feared the daughter of the last person who knew the mirror could expose him. The succession charter turned one final page. On it appeared not Elara's name, not Lucien's, Wren's. Beside it, written in living black fire, were 4 words: Architect of Dawn, Murder. Architect of Dawn, Murder. The words burned across the succession charter in living black fire. For one breath, the crypt forgot how to be silent. Then every dead king statue turned its ember-dark eyes toward Wren. Above, in the Ember Hall, the court saw the same words reflected inside every polished surface: armor, jewels, shattered ruby glass, copper brazier, even the dark pool of fire blood drying beneath Lucien's ribs. There was no whispering now, no laughter. No quick, noble judgment rushing to swallow the servant girl whole. Wren stood before the charter, with his face emptied of expression. That frightened Elara more than rage would have. A man caught by truth usually flinched. Wren only measured how much truth still had to die. Lucien struck the black flame wall again. "The charter has named you." Wren slowly turned toward him. "The charter has been touched by mirror flame blood." Elara's wrists still burned where old law had searched her. The mirror crown trembled above her head, brighter now, no longer pretending to be royal gold. It was silver-white fire, sharp and transparent, reflecting every face in the crypt except Wren's. The dead king spoke. "Mirror. Flame blood bears witness." Elara almost breathed. Then the voices continued. "Witness is not sovereignty." Wren's mouth curved faintly. Lucien went still. Elara understood the trap before Wren even used it. The charter had exposed him, but old law still separated truth from power. It could admit she had seen murder. It could admit Wren had planned murder. But unless someone with recognized authority acted on that truth, the court could still bury it under procedure, succession delay, emergency council, and royal instability. Wren bowed to the statues. "Exactly. She may witness. She may not crown. She may not command. She may not remove a chancellor appointed by dragon law." Lucien's voice was ice. "I can." Wren looked at him through the flame wall. "You are kneeling, wounded, and named compromised by the same future that placed a servant's crown above your head. Old law may hear you, but it need not obey you until the sovereignty question is settled." The succession charter turned another page. Black fire shaped itself into a question. Who holds the flame if the king falls before dawn? The court above gasped. The answer should have been simple. Lucien. He was alive. He was standing in pain, but alive. Yet the old law did not ask who lived. It asked who held the flame if he fell. Wren had built the assassination not only to kill a king, but to make the law rehearse his death before it happened. Calanthe cried out from the hall above. The broken rubies in her hands blazed black. Elara looked upward through the crypt opening and saw her struggling against the remaining fragments of the circlet. The shards wanted the charter. Wren had not needed her loyalty anymore, only the stones. "Calanthe!" Elara shouted. "Drop them into the mirror flame." Calanthe's face twisted with pain. "They will burn through my hands." "Yes," Elara said. "But if they reach the charter, he will write your name into the answer." The flame bride candidate looked at Wren. For the first time, she saw not a mentor, not a strategist, not the man who had promised her queenship through survival, but the architect who would use her name as a bridge over murder. She opened both bleeding hands. The ruby shards fell. Mirror flame rose from the dead dragon mirror above and caught them before they struck the floor. The rubies screamed as black glass burned out of their hearts. Calanthe collapsed beside the broken circlet, shaking, palms bloody but empty. The charter's question flickered. Wren's calm cracked. Only slightly. Enough. Elara turned back to the dead kings. "You ask who holds the flame if he falls before dawn. But that question is part of the murder." The statues did not move. She took one step closer to the charter, wrists still smoking from old law. "You are not judging succession. You are following the path the assassin wrote for you," Wren snapped. "Servants do not instruct dead kings." Elara looked at him. "No. But witnesses name false questions." The mirror crown flared. The charter shuddered. Lucien stared at her from behind the black flame, and despite the blood on his armor, despite the wound and the law, and the entire court trembling above them, something like fierce wonder moved through his eyes. Wren saw it. His voice sharpened. "Your Majesty, be careful. That is how forbidden bloodlines rule. Not by crowns at first, by making kings grateful." Lucien's gaze did not leave Elara. "I am not grateful, because she saved me." Wren laughed coldly. "Then what are you?" Lucien pressed one bloodied hand to his wound and forced himself upright despite the flame wall between them. "Awake." The words struck the crypt. The dead kings turned toward him. Lucien continued, voice rough but steady. "For years, I let old law speak through men who made themselves necessary. Wren brought me order. Calanthe brought me alliance. The priests brought me flame rights. I mistook structure for loyalty because it was easier than asking who benefited from my blindness." The black wall flickered. Elara's throat tightened. Lucien looked at the succession charter. The servant did not put a crown over herself. The mirror did. And the mirror did not place me below her as a conquered king. It placed me where I had to kneel to survive the blade hidden by my own court. The statues listened. Wren's expression hardened. Lucien lifted his sword and pointed it toward the charter. "So I answer the false question. If I fall before dawn because Wren's murder succeeds, the flame does not pass through his charter, his bride candidate, his emergency regency, or any dead law arranged to profit from my blood." The crypt trembled. Wren stepped forward. "You cannot rewrite succession under duress." Lucien's eyes burned gold. "I am not rewriting succession. I am refusing assassination as a legal event." The charter burst into flame. Not black now. Gold. The dead kings spoke in a lower voice. "Then who holds witness until dawn?" The question turned toward Elara. Her heart stopped. Veron smiled again, but there was desperation beneath it now. There, the king hands power to her. No, Lucien said. He looked at Elara, not as a king, looking at a servant, not as a dying man reaching for a tool, as someone asking her to stand in a fire that was not hers, while knowing she had every right to refuse. The mirror crowned you as witness, he said, not sovereign, not bride, not servant, witness. If you accept, you hold no throne. You hold the right to show the next hidden blade before it reaches me. Elara could barely hear over her own heartbeat. A lifetime of orders had taught her to recognize traps, even when they came wrapped in politeness. But this was not Veron's trap. This choice cost Lucien power because it limited what he could ask of her. It did not make her queen. It did not make her property. It gave her authority. Only over truth the mirror revealed. Old law hated it. She felt that in the way the crypt shook. Veron hated it more. She saw that in his face. Elara looked at the dead kings. If I accept as witness, not ruler, will the charter obey what the mirror shows? The statues remained silent for a long moment. Then the oldest statue, cracked from brow to throat, lowered its stone head. Until dawn, the mirror crown settled above Elara's hair, lighter now but more real. Veron moved. His hand plunged into his sleeve and emerged with a thin, black needle of mirror glass, not meant for Lucien this time, meant for the charter. If he could stab the page before dawn witness began, he could corrupt the question again. Elara saw the future flash, Veron's needle entering the page, the charter naming Lucien fallen, the dead kings turning away, Lucien dying at the top of the stairs. She raised both hands. Mirror, show the hand. The dead dragon mirror roared above them. Every reflection in the crypt expanded. Veron's hidden needle became visible in all of them, bright as a black star. Lucien struck the flame wall with his sword. This time, it broke. He surged through the dying barrier, wounded but fast, and caught Veron's wrist before the needle touched the charter. The two men stood face to face over the old law. Veron's voice dropped to a whisper. You would trust a kitchen girl over the man who kept your kingdom standing. Lucien's answer was quiet. No. I trust the truth you tried to kill before she could touch it. He crushed Veron's wrist. The mirror glass needle fell. Elara caught it in mirror flame before it struck the page. The charter blazed gold. The dead kings spoke together. Dawn witness begins. Above them, every door in the Ember Hall slammed shut. The mirror showed a new future. Notre Dame. Not yet. Midnight. A feast table. A cup of ember wine. And a fourth crown waiting in shadow. The mirror showed a new future. Notre Dame. Not yet. Midnight. A feast table stretched beneath the Ember Hall's extinguished chandeliers, laid with black plates, gold knives, and cups of ember wine that glowed red from within. At the head of the table sat Dragon King Lucien, pale but alive, one hand pressed beneath his ribs where the first wound still bled fire. Elara stood behind him wearing the mirror flame crown, not seated, not ruling, only watching. Across from them, Lord Chancellor Veron sat in chains. Then the image shifted. The chains were empty. A cup lifted. A fourth crown waited in shadow. The vision vanished so quickly half the court above gasped in frustration, as if the mirror had become a storyteller withholding the final blade. Elara stood in the succession crypt with mirror fire still burning above her head, her hands trembling from the effort of catching Veron's hidden needle before it poisoned the charter. Lucien gripped Veron's broken wrist, his sword angled between the Chancellor and the old law. The dead kings had declared dawn witness. Yet, the mirror had shown midnight. That meant the assassination was not one act. It was a sequence. First blade, second glass, Third flame. Fourth crown. Veron smiled despite the pain in his crushed wrist. "You see," he said softly, "the mirror does not save him. It only teaches you how many ways he can die." Lucien's eyes turned cold. "Take him." 2 royal guards descended into the crypt at last, shaken but obedient. They seized Veron by both arms. He did not resist. That made Elara uneasy. Men like Veron did not surrender unless surrender had already been priced into the plan. The mirror crown pulsed. Elara saw a flicker. Veron walking in chains past the feast table, his sleeve brushing a cup, the empty seat beside Calanthe, the 4th crown hidden beneath black cloth. She stepped forward. "Search his sleeves." The guards froze. Veron's face did not change. Lucien looked at her. "Do it." One guard tore open Veron's left sleeve. Nothing. The right sleeve. Nothing. The inner lining. Nothing but black silk and a trace of ash. The nobles above began to murmur. Elara felt heat rise to her face. Veron's smile deepened. Dawn witness begins with humiliation, it seems. The old shame reached for her. A servant giving orders and being wrong in front of the court. A low-born girl crowned by a mirror, already overstepping, already becoming what they feared. Then the mirror whispered beneath her skin. Not sleeve. Shadow. Elara looked down. Veron's shadow did not match his body. His real hands were held by guards, but his shadow hand remained closed. Around something small. "Lift the torches," Elara said. This time, no guard moved until Lucien repeated, "Lift them." Blue flame rose along the crypt walls. Veron's shadow stretched across the black stone. In its fist was the outline of a tiny crown, no larger than a ring, made of thorns and fire. Calanthe made a sound from the hall above. "I know that shape." Everyone looked up. She stood near the broken ruby shards, hands bandaged in torn silk, face still pale from confession. "It is a proxy crown. Flame bride houses use them in old betrothal rites. If a king dies before formal succession, the proxy can hold claim long enough for a bride line to petition the throne." Lucien's jaw tightened. Why would Veron's shadow carry one? Calanthe looked at Veron, horror sharpening into understanding. "Because it does not need to be placed on a living head," the mirror answered. The feast table appeared again, a cup of ember wine, Lucien collapsing, Veron's chains empty, Calanthe weeping beside the table, and the tiny proxy crown placed on Lucien's shadow. The court erupted. Elara's stomach turned. "The 4th crown is not for me," she said. "It is for his shadow." Veron's expression finally hardened. Lucien looked at him. "You planned to crown my death before my body cooled." "I planned continuity," Veron said. "You planned to hand legal witness to a servant whose blood should have stayed extinct." Elara's mirror crown flared at the word extinct. A memory flashed again. Her mother before the dead dragon mirror, a baby wrapped in servant cloth, Veron's younger hand holding a blade. This time the memory did not shatter before the strike. The mirror held it steady. Younger Veron drove the blade into the woman's side, not killing her quickly, but pushing her toward the glass. "Mirror, flame blood does not die cleanly," he said in the memory. "It reflects." Elara's mother pressed her bloody palm to the mirror. The glass took the blood. The baby cried. Then the memory folded inward, hiding the child behind servant ash, kitchen smoke, and years of forgotten names. Elara staggered. Lucien moved toward her, but stopped when the mirror crown steadied itself above her head. He understood somehow that this pain was not one he could interrupt without stealing the witness from her. Veron watched her with almost academic interest. "You were supposed to remain nothing," he said. "Your mother's bloodline had already ruined one succession. I thought the Kitchens would bury the rest." Elara looked at him. All the fear in her began changing shape, not into cruelty, into clarity. "You did not fear servants becoming royal," she said. "You feared anyone low enough to see what nobles do when they think no reflection matters." The dead dragon mirror thundered. The dead king spoke from the statues. Witness accepted. The shadow crown in Wren's shadow hand burst into visible flame. Lucien's sword cut through the shadow. Wren screamed, not because the blade touched flesh, because it severed the legal spell hidden where no guard had searched. The tiny proxy crown fell out of his shadow and struck the crypt floor, burning black. Calanthe descended the stairs slowly. Every step looked like it cost her pride and fear both. She stopped before the proxy crown. "My house made those," she said. Wren laughed through pain. "Your house sold them." Her face tightened. Then she lifted her foot and crushed the burning crown beneath her heel. The black flame vanished. The succession charter turned a page. On it appeared a list of names. Wren, 3 flame, priests, 2 border lords, Lady Calanthe's father, and a dozen officials whose seals had waited behind the 4th crown. The court saw them all reflected above. Panic became something sharper, political terror. The assassination was no longer a hidden strike. It was a map. Lucien pointed his sword toward the guards. "Seal the hall. No one leaves until every name on that page is bound." Wren's smile returned, faint and bitter. "You think a list ends this?" Elara already knew it did not. The mirror showed the feast table again, but now the cup shattered. The proxy crown burned. The chain around Wren tightened. Still, one shadow remained at the end of the table. A figure without a face. A crown not of flame, not mirror, not proxy. Bone white. Elara stepped closer to the mirror fire vision. "What is that?" The dead kings did not answer. The dead dragon mirror did. Its surface turned toward the dragon throne above. There, behind the empty seat, hidden in the carved dragon bone, a narrow compartment opened. Inside lay an old crown made of white dragon bone. Lucien went still. Wren closed his eyes. Not in defeat, in satisfaction. Calanthe whispered, "The regent crown." Lucien's face hardened. "It was destroyed after my father's reign." Wren opened his eyes. "No," he said. "It was waiting for a king too wounded to finish the night." The dragon-bone crown rose from its compartment by itself. Every dead king statue bowed its head. The succession charter burned black at the edges. Elara's mirror crown turned cold. The regent crown floated above the throne, waiting to choose a ruler who did not need Lucien alive. Then the bone-white crown spoke, with a voice older than Wren. "If the king bleeds under witness, the realm may choose a steadier hand. If the king bleeds under witness, the realm may choose a steadier hand." The bone-white regent crown hovered above the dragon throne. The ember hall went cold, not from winter, not from magic alone, from recognition. Every noble in the hall knew that crown, even if most had never seen it outside forbidden illustrations in old succession books. It belonged to the age before Lucien's father broke the regencies, before dragon kings ruled by their own fire instead of councils holding crowns over wounded heads. It had been made for emergencies, then for convenience, then for control. Lucien stared at it from the crypt below, one hand still pressed beneath his ribs. His wound bled slower now, but it had not closed. Fire blood darkened the edge of his armor. His face was pale with pain, and the dead king's old lore had noticed. That was the cruelty of the final crown. It did not need him dead. It only needed him weakened in public. Wren lifted his chin despite the guards holding him. "You see?" he said. "This is larger than me." Elara stood beneath the mirror flame crown, looking up through the broken floor toward the bone-white crown above the throne. The dead dragon mirror reflected both crowns at once, hers made of silver, gold witness fire, the regent crown made of pale dragon bone and old hunger. The succession charter burned black at the edges. The dead king spoke again. If the living flame is compromised, the realm may choose regency. Lucien's jaw tightened. I am not dead, the regent crown answered, calm and merciless. Not yet. The court recoiled. Elara felt the mirror crown flare as the word entered every reflection. Not yet. That had been the truth beneath every blade tonight. Not one clean assassination, but a slow arrangement of inevitability. A wound here, a shard there, a false future, a servant blamed, a bride candidate used, a chancellor exposed too late, a regent crown waiting to turn survival into legal weakness. Veron had not built a murder. He had built a replacement. Calanthe stood near the throne steps, face pale, hand still bleeding from the ruby shards she had crushed. She looked at the floating crown with horror. Who does it choose? The regent crown turned slightly, not toward Veron, toward the court. Every noble with old blood stepped back. The crown did not move like an object seeking a head. It moved like a predator tasting ambition. It passed over border lords, over priests, over flame brides, over council elders. Each time it paused, the dead dragon mirror showed a reflection. Secret letters, quiet bargains, promises made if Lucien fell before dawn. Elara's stomach turned. Half the court had not held the blade, but half, the court, had prepared for the wound. Lucien saw the reflections too. The pain in his face changed. It became colder, not because he was surprised by betrayal, because he was done mistaking silence for innocence. The regent crown finally stopped above one man, Lord Arveth Kor, first flame lord of the eastern provinces. He stood among the nobles in a cloak of red-black dragon scale, broad-faced, grey-bearded, respected by soldiers and old houses. He had said nothing all night. That silence had made him look wise. The mirror showed otherwise. Letters sealed in bone-white wax. Promises of temporary regency. Border armies waiting for a dawn signal. Veron's hand signing beneath Arveth's name. Calanthe's father offering flame bride support if Lucien's death could be made lawful. The court gasped. Arveth's face hardened. A kingdom cannot be left in the hands of a wounded king and a crowned servant. Elara felt the old sting in the words. Crowned, servant. Still not name. Still not witness. Lucien took one step toward the crypt stairs. His wound flared. He almost fell. Elara moved, then stopped herself. She could not keep catching him in front of old law, while the regent crown waited to call every act of care proof of weakness. Lucien saw her stop. Something like gratitude crossed his face. He steadied himself on his own sword. Then he looked up at Arveth. You prepared armies. Arveth did not deny it. I prepared continuity. Veron smiled faintly. The word had served them all night. Continuity, order, protection, stability. Beautiful names for hands reaching toward a throne before the body beneath it had gone cold. The dead dragon mirror thundered. Elara lifted both hands. Show the first bargain. The regent crown turned toward her, and for one terrible second, its bone-white light struck the mirror crown above her head. Pain flashed through her skull. The old law did not like being witnessed by blood it had tried to erase, but the dead dragon mirror answered. A reflection opened across the hall. Veron, Arveth, Calanthe's father, and 3 flame priests stood in a hidden chamber beneath the old war map. The bone-white crown rested on the table. Veron spoke first. The king will bleed before midnight, Arveth answered. If he lives, Veron smiled. Then old law will make living look unstable, Calanthe's father asked. And the servant? Wren placed a small shard of black mirror on the map. If she wakes the mirror, she becomes the reason he kneels. If she does not, she becomes proof low. Born blood cannot touch prophecy. Either way, she is useful only until dawn. The reflection faded. The court was silent now, not confused. Court. Lucien looked at Elara. His face held rage, pain, and something softer he had not earned the right to name. They planned for you too. Elara swallowed. Yes, the word was small, but it carried everything. Her humiliation, her forced hand on the mirror, her dead mother's bloodline, the crown she had never wanted, the future that had used her, because men like Wren had arranged a kingdom where only the powerless could be blamed safely. The regent crown descended toward Arvith. Lucien raised his sword. The dead kings spoke. A wounded king may not strike a chosen regent during emergency judgment. Black flame wrapped around Lucien's sword arm. He froze. Arvith smiled. Elara stepped forward. The dead kings did not stop her. Wren's smile vanished. Elara looked at the statues below. May a witness ask the chosen regent one question? The crypt was silent. Then the oldest dead king answered. One. Elara turned toward Arvith. If Lucien dies before dawn, what is the first order you give? Arvith's expression hardened. To secure the realm. The mirror crown flared. Not what you tell the court, Elara said. What you already wrote. The dead dragon mirror reflected a parchment hidden inside Arvith's inner cloak. A royal order. Unsigned but prepared. Purge all mirror flame remnants. Seal the dead dragon mirror. Execute the servant, Elara Wren, before sunrise under prophecy contamination. Lucien's eyes went gold-white with fury. The court recoiled. Arvith reached for the parchment. Calanthe moved first. She crossed the dais and tore it from his cloak before he could stop her. He struck her across the face so hard she stumbled, but she held the paper high. Blood ran from her lip. Her voice shook. This is his first order. The regent crown stopped descending. Elara looked at the dead kings. He does not want to steady the realm. He wants to kill the witness before the realm can hear her. The succession charter blazed. The regent crown cracked. Arvith shouted. A servant's bloodline has no place judging dragon succession. Lucien's voice came from below, low and devastating. Then dragon succession has no place demanding her death to survive. The dead kings turned toward him. Lucien stepped through the black flame binding his sword arm. It burned him. He did not stop. Elara Wren is not my regent, not my bride, not my possession. She is dawn witness by old law's own answer. His voice shook the hall. And if the throne requires her execution to make my bleeding convenient, then the throne is confessing what kind of law it has become. The mirror crown above Elara burned bright. Lucien looked at the succession charter. I revoke emergency regency where assassination creates the emergency. The crypt convulsed. Wren screamed, You cannot revoke dead kings. Lucien's eyes did not leave the statues. No. But I can refuse to let dead kings be used by living traitors. He drove his sword into the floor of the crypt. Gold fire erupted through the black stone and climbed the statues, not destroying them, illuminating them. The dead kings' faces changed in the flame, not alive, not kind, but finally forced to see the plot built in their names. The regent crown split down the center. Bone-white shards fell onto the throne steps. Arvith's longel for one. Calanthe kicked it into the mirror flame. The shard vanished. The succession charter turned its final page. On it, in gold fire, appeared the verdict. Dawn murder, conspiracy witnessed. Emergency regency void. Crown remains with living flame. Wren closed his eyes. This time, not in satisfaction, in defeat. The guards seized Arvith, then Calanthi's father, then the flame priests whose names burned across the charter. The Ember Hall filled with the sound of old power being dragged from its velvet places. Elara stood beneath the mirror crown until the last name was read. Only then did the dead dragon mirror release her. The crown of mirror flame dissolved into sparks and returned to the black glass. Elara swayed, as if the air itself had been holding her upright. Lucien was there before she fell. He did not catch her without permission. He stopped close enough for her to choose. She looked at his outstretched hand, then placed her fingers in his. Only then did he steady her. Above them, dawn light entered the high windows of the Ember Hall. Pale gold across shattered rubies, broken mirror hammers, burned succession pages, and the open floor of the crypt. The dead dragon mirror no longer looked dead. It reflected the hall now, not perfectly, not gently, but truthfully. Lucien stood before the court, with blood still beneath his ribs. "Elara Wren's name is restored," he said. "Her mother's murder will be entered into royal record. Mirror flame blood is no longer outlawed. No servant will be punished for seeing what a noble wanted hidden." The court bowed, some from loyalty, some from fear. Some because the mirror forced their reflections to bow before their bodies remembered pride. Then Lucien turned to Elara. The hall waited for the familiar ending. The king saved, the servant revealed, the woman claimed beside the throne before she could decide what survival had cost her. Lucien did not give them that. He removed his crown from the throne step where it had fallen during the chaos, and held it in both hands, not toward her head, toward his own chest. "I saw a future where you wore this because I refused to kneel long enough to live," he said quietly. "I will not make that future your chain." Elara's throat tightened. "I did not want your crown. I know. I still do not." The faintest painful smile touched his mouth. "Good." The word startled her. Lucien looked toward the dead dragon mirror. "Then if you ever stand beside it again, it will be because you choose witness, not because my court requires your blood to save mine." Elara looked at the mirror. For most of her life, glass had not reflected her at all. Servants passed through polished halls like shadows, cleaning the world that refused to see them. Tonight, the dead mirror had seen too much. Her mother's murder, Veron's plot, Lucien's wound, her own unwilling crown. It had not given her power gently, but it had given her truth. "What do you ask of me?" she said. Lucien's answer came without hesitation. "Nothing before rest. Nothing without choice. And someday, if you allow it, the chance to become the man who deserved to be warned by you." That was not a claim. That was a beginning. Elara looked at his hand again. This time, she took it not because she was falling, not because the mirror crowned her, not because the court needed a symbol, because she wanted to feel if the warmth in his palm was real. It was. Behind them, the dead dragon mirror reflected the dawn. No crown on Elara's head. No king kneeling in blood. Only a servant girl standing beside a dragon king who had learned that survival sometimes began when pride lowered itself before truth. And this time, the mirror did not warn. It simply reflected.